No one ever imagined that Tom Selleck had been hiding a secret about James Garner for over 4 decades. On screen, they were allies. But behind the screen, a quiet tension simmered beneath the surface. Admiration, envy, and a single piece of advice that would change television history forever. Why did a beloved icon like Selleck stay silent? What was he afraid of? Who kept this story buried for so long? And why is it finally coming to light now? That night, inside an old pickup truck, Garner said just a few words. Only a few. But they were enough to turn a picture-perfect leading man into a flawed, unforgettable hero. Stay with us as we uncover what really happened between these two men and how it changed Hollywood forever. To understand the complex bond between Tom Selleck and James Garner, we have to return to the beginning, when Selleck was just another face in Hollywood's endless line of dreamers. His rise wasn't built on privilege or luck, but on rejection, failure, and persistence. Born in Detroit, far from Hollywood's glow, Selleck grew up in a working-class family that valued integrity over ambition. His father often said, "You're judged by your worst act, not your best." Those words stayed with him as he entered a world that judged by looks, not character. At the University of Southern California, he studied business and played basketball, never dreaming of acting. Then fate intervened. A friend dared him to appear on The Dating Game. The result? Not love, but a Pepsi commercial contract, his accidental ticket into Hollywood. Yet behind that door wasn't fame. It was struggle. Over the next decade, Selleck endured setback after setback. He signed with 20th Century Fox, only to be fired without warning. He starred in 6 TV pilots, each one failing before ever airing. A long series of failures. He later called it. Every rejection deepened his distrust of the system that treated actors like inventory. He took odd jobs, filmed commercials, and supported his wife and stepson while chasing an ever-fading dream. "I knew the day would come," Selleck recalled, "when I'd either make it or walk away for good." Yet beneath the exhaustion grew something sharper, a hunger for control. Selleck didn't just want success, he wanted agency, the ability to shape his career and define his own worth. Hollywood had given him nothing but frustration, and he was done playing by its rules. And as he looked around at a business built on charm and power, not one man seemed to embody everything he lacked: confidence, respect, effortless success. That man was James Garner. While Tom Selleck was fighting to stay afloat, James Garner was already everything Hollywood adored: charismatic, confident, and seemingly untouchable. To a struggling actor watching from the sidelines, Garner wasn't just a star. He was the embodiment of everything the system rewarded. Garner's success looked effortless. As Jim Rockford in The Rockford Files, he became television's everyman hero. Witty, imperfect, but deeply likable. The character mirrored Garner himself, a man who didn't rely on brute force, but on intelligence, humor, and heart. America loved him for it, and the industry respected him even more. But behind that easy charm was a man of conviction. Garner treated his crew like family, ensuring loyalty and fairness in an industry built on ego. He fought for his writers, demanded better conditions, and even took his own studio to court when he believed they cheated him out of profits. To many, he was the rare actor who stood for both art and integrity. For Selleck, watching Garner was both inspiring and painful. Here was someone who had everything he wanted: creative control, respect, stability, all wrapped in a casual grin that made success look simple. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. One man drowning in failed pilots, the other defining an era. And yet, buried under admiration was something more complex: envy, not hatred, but the ache of knowing someone else had mastered the very world that kept rejecting you. Selleck would later admit that Garner made it look easy. But nothing about Selleck's path had ever been easy. Soon, fate would bring the two men together, not as equals, but as characters on the same screen. And in that meeting, all of Selleck's frustration and ambition would find a mirror in the man he both admired and resented. When Tom Selleck finally got his break, it came from the most unexpected place, inside the world James Garner had already conquered. After years of rejection, Selleck landed a recurring role on The Rockford Files, the very show that had made Garner a legend. For most actors, it would have been a dream come true. For Selleck, it was something else entirely, an irony too sharp to ignore. He was cast as Lance White, a rival private investigator to Garner's Jim Rockford. But Lance wasn't just another character. He was a parody, the embodiment of everything Rockford wasn't: polished, privileged, and impossibly perfect. The joke was clear. Lance was the golden boy who never failed, the man who smiled his way through danger while the real hero Rockford stumbled and suffered. To audiences, it was hilarious. To Selleck, it was uncomfortable, even haunting. The role forced him to look directly at the version of himself Hollywood had tried to turn him into for years. Handsome, charming, but hollow. The same qualities that made casting directors notice him were the ones that kept him from being taken seriously. Playing Lance White was a cruel reflection of that trap. On screen, he was the walking definition of too perfect. Off-screen, he was the man still trying to prove he was more than a face. Garner, ever the professional, played the chemistry to perfection. His Rockford rolled his eyes at Lance's luck, mocked his blind optimism, and grew visibly frustrated by his charm. It was comedy, yes, but there was truth behind it. In many ways, Rockford's exasperation mirrored Selleck's own feelings toward Garner himself. Rockford couldn't stand how easily things came to Lance. Selleck couldn't stand how effortlessly Garner made success look. It was art imitating life in the most literal way. Each scene became a quiet duel, the young actor fighting not just for screen time, but for identity. While Rockford grumbled about Lance's perfection, Selleck fought to escape the same curse in his own career. And yet, beneath that rivalry, something else was happening. Selleck was learning. Watching Garner work, he began to understand what real control looked like. Garner wasn't loud or demanding. He was calm, prepared, confident. He ran his set like a family, treating everyone, from crew members to extras, with respect. Selleck saw that leadership didn't have to come from power. It came from trust. Still, the shadow was heavy. When the Rockford Files episodes aired, Lance White became a fan favorite. Viewers loved the character's ridiculous perfection, and Selleck's comedic timing made it even better. But inside, he worried he was being boxed in again. He didn't want to spend his career playing the perfect guy. He wanted to play someone real, flawed, conflicted, human. That's why when Magnum P.I. came knocking, Selleck's reaction wasn't joy. It was dread. The pilot script described Thomas Magnum as another glossy, untouchable hero, a playboy detective in Hawaii who drove a Ferrari and dated flight attendants. It was Lance White all over again, only this time he was the star. Selleck was furious. After 10 years of fighting to escape the handsome hero stereotype, Hollywood was trying to pull him right back into it. He considered turning the role down, even though it was the biggest opportunity of his life. He didn't want to be another cardboard cutout with a perfect smile. But there was one person who might understand, the man who had once embodied the type of hero Selleck now refused to be. So, he went to see James Garner. The meeting was quiet, unplanned, and deeply symbolic. Selleck showed up unsure of what he even wanted, advice, maybe, or validation. Garner listened as Selleck poured out his frustration. He told him he didn't want to play a character who was fake, who lived in a fantasy. He wanted to play a man who made mistakes, who laughed at himself, who bled when life hit him. Garner didn't interrupt. He just nodded, letting Selleck finish. Then, after a long pause, he said the words that would change everything. "If they want you, Tom, you'll never have more power than you do right now. If you believe in something, fight for it. This is your moment." It wasn't just advice. It was a transfer of wisdom from one generation of television icons to the next. Garner wasn't telling Selleck what to do. He was telling him that control was his to take. For a man who had spent a decade being told what he couldn't do, those words hit like lightning. Selleck left that conversation knowing exactly what had to happen. He went back to the producers of Magnum P.I. and demanded changes. The character had to be flawed, grounded, even self-deprecating. He wanted Magnum to be human, not another superhero in a Hawaiian shirt. It was a risky move. Refusing a studio script could have ended his career before it began. But Garner's words gave him courage, and when the network finally agreed to his vision, the transformation was complete. The man who once played Lance White, the joke of perfection, was about to create Thomas Magnum, a hero defined by imperfection. What started as envy had turned into evolution. The student had learned from the man he once resented, and soon the world would see the result, a character who changed television forever. But before the world celebrated him, one question remained. Could Tom Selleck truly escape the shadow of the man who taught him how to stand in it? That conversation in James Garner's truck changed everything. For years, Tom Selleck had felt powerless, a man pushed around by studios, molded into roles he didn't believe in. But Garner's advice flipped a switch. If they want you, you'll never have more power than right now. It was both a challenge and a blessing. Selleck took it to heart. He returned to the Magnum PI team not as a desperate actor, but as a man who finally knew his worth. He fought to reshape the character into someone authentic, a Vietnam veteran with humor, doubt, and humility. He wanted a man who struggled, who failed, who tried again. The studio eventually agreed, and the result was lightning in a bottle. Magnum PI became a global phenomenon, turning Selleck into one of the biggest stars of the 1980s. But more importantly, it validated Garner's philosophy. Audiences don't connect with perfection. They connect with truth. Selleck had learned that lesson the hard way, and now he embodied it. Years later, he carried that same spirit into Blue Bloods, creating a family atmosphere on set just as Garner once had. He became the leader he had once envied, calm, fair, and quietly powerful. The supposed rivalry had never been hatred. It was evolution, the transformation of envy into wisdom. Garner didn't just open a door for Selleck. He handed him the key to his own freedom. And when Selleck later reflected on his long career, he didn't talk about fame or money. He talked about integrity, the very thing Garner had modeled for him. Two men, two generations, bound by one truth. Real heroes aren't perfect. They're the ones who choose to fight for what feels right. In the end, what began as silent rivalry became a story of mentorship and legacy. Tom Selleck's career, from Magnum PI to Blue Bloods, carries the imprint of James Garner's wisdom. A reminder that strength lies not in perfection, but in vulnerability. The enemy he once envied turned out to be the teacher he needed most. When Garner passed away in 2014, Selleck called him the model for how to be both a professional and a human being. It wasn't flattery, it was gratitude. That single conversation in a dusty pickup decades earlier had changed the course of his life. And perhaps that's the real lesson of Hollywood. Beneath the fame and the spotlight, the most powerful stories are the ones that pass quietly from one man's hard-earned truth to another's rebirth.